After mass movements for liberty, equality, and fraternity for all in the early 19th century, Europe's power structure was in shambles, and conflict over how to restore peace arose. Liberals strongly believed that long-lasting peace would come from government reform, whereas conservatives advocated for re-establishing the old.
Hello there. Welcome to Clash of the Isms, featuring me, James Briggs, critically acclaimed star of Hitler's Soft Side and Duck and Cover 2, Revenge of the Ducks. We start off in early 19th century Europe, where France's Napoleon Bonaparte had just wreaked havoc on Europe's balance of power, leaving it in shambles. In order to fix this, the leaders of France, Austria, Great Britain, and Russia formed a holy alliance and met with the intention to return peace to Europe.
In an attempt to stabilize Europe, Russian Tsar Alexander I met with Clemens von Metternich in Vienna, Austria in 1815, as well as Castlereagh of Great Britain and Talleyrand of France. The four leaders discussed the fate of France after Napoleon Bonaparte's defeat, and they were trying to figure out how to properly and equally distribute monarchical power across Europe.
One conservatist in particular thought to redraw the map of Europe to keep it stable and maintain monarchical power. This said conservatist was Clemens von Metternich of Austria. Metternich hosted the Congress of Vienna in 1815, of whom delegates from Great Britain, France, and Russia attended. Other key players in the Congress of Vienna during the remapping of Europe were Emperor Ferdinand I of Austria, Charles X of France, leading to the Carlsbad Decrees and the Congress of Trappeau.
During 1830, there was a set of liberalist revolutions against the Austrian Empire. 90% of the peasants, the working class, and the commoners had finally began to fight against the upper classes, the aristocrats and the royals. While liberal support mounted, conservatism was suffering in the followers of the 1830s.
Despite so many liberals being against the monarchy, the Bourbon family had a huge influence that maintained their conservative powers. The Bourbons were ruling the family of France, Spain, and Naples at the time, and they sided with the most powerful empires, giving the upper hand financially in military tactics and force.
French conservatives remained loyal to the restored monarchies, but the revolutions of 1830 and 1848 by liberalists dealt with successive blows against conservatives. Before the end of the 19th century, the Habsburg and the Bourbon families clamored for a non-existent French throne. Despite their best efforts, it was not up to either family who would be put on the throne. The decision was left up to the free people following national male suffrage.
Though it seemed like a stable idea at first, the growing desire for independence of the working and lower classes, a sentiment known as nationalism, was spreading fast. In turn, numerous violent conflicts between newly made states broke out, thus weakening conservative power. Though long-standing empires such as Metternich's Austria were strong and equipped with powerful forces to confront threats, they were surrounded by too much liberal opposition. Italy was unifying in the south, and Greece was working towards the same goal. Wars were beginning inside empires such as the Ottoman Empire, and were crumbling from the inside out.
At this point, the tides have begun to change to favor the liberal agenda. The age of Metternich and conservatism was drawing to a close. To better explain the liberalist movement, we will now turn it over to our Professor Know-It-All, Everett Knox.
I'm on a horse.
Thank you, Rachel. As James said, the long-established empires were crumbling from the inside out. Liberalists were regaining the upper hand. Liberalism is defined as a culmination of social, economic, and political ideologies. It promotes restricted government power, free market, and personal liberties for all citizens of society. It was initially used in an economic context, but was later extended to include politics. John Locke and Scott Adam Smith were among the first to use the word liberal in their work. In Adams' The Wealth of Nations, among his other works, liberal was used in context with trade and domestic policies. John Locke often applied the word liberal when discussing government reform. However, Jean-Jacques Rousseau was most renowned by liberals during the 19th century for his strong beliefs about liberalism and the general will. No young zealous liberal of the 19th century was without Rousseau's literature tucked under their arm. Liberalism's main principles, stemming from the 17th century were not completely snuffed out during the Congress of Vienna. Quite the contrary, the ideologies lay smoldering in the hearts of the displeased before reigniting in an unyielding movement of governmental reform. Its influence infiltrated Louis XVIII, which is evident in his constitutional charter, prevailed in British society and impacted economies all over the continent. The idea of free economics was first introduced by Adam Smith in the 18th century and grew as liberalism grew. Laissez-faire economics were welcomed, especially in Britain, where old trade and industry regions were relaxed. This economic liberation was especially beneficial to the Industrial Revolution, encouraging the growth of innovation in industry. The competing ideologies of Thomas Malthus, who argued that population would grow faster than the food supply, and David Ricardo, who theorized that wages would be just high enough to keep laborers from starving, further drove economic liberalism in support of business interests. Liberalist ideals utilize primarily politics to transmit to civilians displeased with the government, seen strongly in the Charter of 1814. Louis XVIII's new constitution had established a constitutional monarchy, civil liberties, and a bicameral parliamentary system. Liberalist ideals had led to the decline of monarchs, privilege of the aristocracy, and excessive wealth within the upper middle class.
Outside of economics, liberalism also impacted class structure. In the early 19th century, liberals generally pushed for property qualifications associated with the right to vote, though it later grew to identify with the middle class advocating for universal suffrage. Revolutions of 1848 involved France, Austria, the German Confederation, and Italy. France was driven by the poor economic conditions and lack of government representation. Louis Philippe, previously elected for his promise to pursue an electoral reform, abdicated the throne to his son when he failed to provide. On June 24, 1848, a battle broke out between the government and workers. The revolution resulted in the fall of the monarchy and republicanism in France. Austria was motivated by similar desires. On March 13, 1848, Austrian peasants crowded the streets of Vienna, demanding a constitution for Austria. Their protest resulted in citizens gaining some personal freedom from the government, but little else in terms of government reform. The German Confederation wanted to unify the 30 states that comprised it, as well as to establish a more constitutional monarchy. During this revolution, Prussia, led by Otto von Bismarck, wanted to help unite the northern states of Germany into officially the Northern German Confederation. Despite other minor victories for the Confederation, at the end of the revolution, the Confederation remained as such and never became its own state as intended. Italy also sought unification in the south in addition to replacing existing political entities. Its citizens revolted against the Habsburgs, the ruling family at the time, in Milan on March 18, 1848. However, about a week following, General Count Joseph retreated from Milan. At the end of the revolution, Pope Pius IX renounced liberalism and the current king abdicated the throne.
The struggle for government reform and continent-wide stability seesawed between all of the isms, most notably between liberalism and conservatism. Though arguments can be made of the fates of nationalism, conservatism, liberalism, and socialism in the present day, no single ism has truly died out. Many countries, such as China, have socialist governments, and in America, there is both a conservative and liberal spirit. However, there is yet to be a perfect form of government, and so the struggle continues. Thanks for joining us on Clash of the Isms. Join us again for new episodes airing every week. Thanks again, and good night.